Hello, I'm Jasper, you're watching Buckle Up, and this is the latest generation of Kia Sportage. Now, in recent years, the Sportage has firmly been in the top 10 best-selling cars in the UK, so I'm going to try and find out why that is. We'll start, as always, at the front of the car, where you can really see a massively refreshed design in comparison with the previous generation of Sportage. You've got the new badge at the front, you've got a really statement grille with a beautiful gloss black plastic finish over it. You've got these striking light clusters, which really kind of point in towards the centre of the car. I really love the styling of the LED running lights and the segregation of the headlamps and side light clusters within. These three strikes here are your indicators, and you've also got a bit of satin silver bodywork at the front as a front splitter. A couple of further notable features at the front of this car. This particular model, being one of the highest spec trims available, is absolutely brimming with safety tech. You've got forward collision warning, you've got parking sensors all round, and you've got fully adaptive cruise control with lane keeping assist. Part of that will be this sensor hidden behind this bit of bodywork. You've also got a few other sensors over here at the front of the car, and it really does take technology to the max. Moving round to the side of the Sportage, you can see a continuation of the modernisation of this design. While it retains very similar proportions to the previous generation, it has a much more refreshing and modern look. You've got interesting shapes in the bodywork with a few different creases really emphasising the shape of the vehicle, and you've got a nice kind of satin finish silver strip running along the bottom of the window line, and then you've got a gorgeous gloss black plastic trim that follows all the way over from the wheel arches through the centre section of the car. You've got a kind of two-tone roof, so you've got the same gloss black trim up the centre of the windows and all the way over the top of the vehicle. So that adds a kind of element of lightness to what is quite a boxy shape, but it's one that is well styled and kind of hides that size relatively well. Additionally, while we're at the side of the vehicle, I'd like to point out these alloy wheels, which actually I think look a little bit too small for the size of the car. And behind these alloy wheels, which I must say I do like the design and the colour of, you've got pretty beefy sets of rotors. The front discs are vented, however the rear discs are just chunky standard discs. Now, while I really like the design refresh up at the front of the Sportage, I'm not as much of a fan of the rear styling, and the main reason for that is how large this panel is here. I think it's a little bit too much metal that doesn't have much going for it. It's a very simple kind of concave shape. I feel like if there was a crease across it, it might be a little bit more interesting and therefore acceptable to me. However, there are some really good features at the back of this car that I do like and want to point out. The first of which is the fact that you've got this spoiler over the rear glass, which actually conceals your rear windscreen wiper. It's a much cleaner design because you don't have the wiper sticking out from the tailgate glass here. While we're here, Kia's new logo, or well, not new anymore, but also I must say this piece of black plastic cladding that's tied in round the rest of the car also looks very good, as does this splitter. The profile of the boot line is interesting, with this piece kind of pinched out here, although the bit that sticks out the most is of course your bumper at the bottom. Now, the rear of the car is the angle that I like the least, partly because it shows just how large this car is. Because you've got quite a lot of ground clearance at the back, it really does make the car look quite lifted up, and I'm not too sure how I feel about that. It's one that disguises its size quite well from the front and side, but at the rear you really do get a picture of how large this car is. While I'm not a massive fan of the size of this panel, I do like the fact that the shape at the top where it follows down underneath the light cluster is mirrored with the shape at the bottom, a nice parallel piece of design curving across the back of the car. Final thing, you've got your Kia 7-year warranty badge in the rear windscreen, and that really is probably one of the reasons why the Sportage is so popular. Kia are so confident with their product that they are able to stick a 7-year warranty on it, whereas most manufacturers stick at 3, maybe 5 if you're lucky. So getting a 7-year manufacturer warranty limited to 100,000 miles or 3 years with unlimited miles really does show how much confidence Kia has in their products. Let's have a look in the boot of the Sportage, again one of its selling features. Automated tailgate on this model, and you will see within 591 litres of storage space, which is just about top of the class, only slightly beaten out by the Hyundai Tucson, to which this car is very heavily related. Now the boot is a really fantastically usable size and shape, incredibly boxy, and not too much space is taken away by the rear wheel arches. You've got a completely flat load floor, however you can also drop this shelf down and claw back just a tiny bit more space, another useful feature. You've got a 12-volt socket in the side of the boot, you've got luggage tie-down hooks, you've got curry hooks or hooks for carrier bags, you've got quite a large load cover which does fit underneath this floor, which is really good, and you've also got levers to allow you to fold down the rear seats without having to faff about in the front of the car. And when they're down, it's an almost flat load floor all the way through to the front seats. Brilliant. Now the back of the Sportage is one of the places to be, and I believe this is one of the reasons why this car is so popular, and that is because it's incredibly spacious, really well kitted out, and the materials back here are wonderful. Now obviously this is one of the higher spec models, so stuff like that is not really a given, but it's something you would expect, and I'm so pleased to be able to say that the Sportage really does deliver when it comes to space, interior quality and design. You've got really lovely materials all the way up the door cards. Even this plastic at the top is not overly cheap and scratchy feeling. And then you've got a really nice leather-esque armrest here. You've got gloss black trim around the rear window controls and the rear heated seat controls. 2-stage heated seats back here, and the actual seats themselves are this gorgeous perforated leather. You've got a nice bit of kind of suede material in the center here, and you've got really good features, pair of cup holders in the center. You've got a USB-C port in the rear of the front 2 seats, and you've actually got a rear zone for climate controls, which is just fantastic. Pockets on the backs of both the driver and passenger seats, as well as a little item hook here and somewhere to actually store your jacket. Now the rear bench does seat 3 relatively comfortably because the interior space of this car is really good. However, the thing that I must complain about a little bit is the fact that the center seat belt is one of those ones that you've got to drop down from the ceiling. So that is just a little bit annoying when it comes to regularly carrying 3 passengers in the back of the car, if that's something you do. Now with this lever down behind me against the side of the seat, you can see that actually these recline a tremendous amount, and for a longer journey, somebody who is a good bit taller than I am would really find themselves pretty comfortable back here. And obviously if you want to maximize a little bit more room in the boot, you're able to bring that backrest up, sit a little bit more upright, lose a tiny smidge of headroom, but also still remain very comfortable. In fact, in its fully reclined position, this would probably be a little bit too laid back for me. I'd prefer it somewhere around here, but the seats go all the way back to here. So on the whole, rear space in 3 dimensions, legroom, headroom and width is really good. The material quality back here is excellent. You really have got a lot of good features in the back of the Sportage. The front of the Sportage really continues what you find in the back and takes it to a little bit more of a level, because while you've got excellent materials and the same quality of fit and finish up here, you've got a really good range of features. Higher spec models get a twin 12.3-inch infotainment and digital drivers clustered, which really kind of cement a feeling of modern design and technology into the cabin experience up here. I absolutely love this kind of textured material that runs across the dashboard, coupled with the gloss black trim around the center console, switchgear on the door card, and running around the air vents on the passenger side of the vehicle. The materials you touch are all excellent. You've got the same perforated leather seats, leather steering wheel, really nice armrest door card here and leather armrest in the center, and the dashboard itself is, you know, really good for all the time you spend driving around touching your dashboard, I know. And again, black headliner and vanity mirrors in both of the sun visors. The cabin in here really is very good. I am incredibly impressed. So let's talk about some of the features we have up in the front of the Sportage. Both of the front seats are 3-stage heated and 3-stage ventilated. I've also got a heated steering wheel for those frosty mornings, and I've got several buttons in the center console that allow me to turn on the parking assist system that allows me to park it using the key. I've got a drive mode selector for the sport or eco modes, and I've got a rotary dial to allow me to choose which gear I'm in. I've got a heck of a lot of buttons on the steering wheel with audio controls, cruise controls, menu controls and stereo controls. I've got a start-stop engine button, and I've got a really good amount of storage space up here. The door cards have incredibly spacious pockets in them. I've got a little cubby by the door pull. I've got space for my phone down here on a wireless charging pad. And I've got twin cup holders here, but you can also fold the cup holders away if you want to be able to put something larger in this space and don't want to put a drink here. I've got a really good sized armrest, cubby hole, and the glove box itself is really spacious. As I mentioned before, the materials in here are gorgeous. All of the switchgear feels really high quality, and it's got a very satisfying click as you run through the light settings or the wiper settings as well. The only thing I really have to complain about material-wise in the front of the car is I've whacked my knee on this hard plastic here a couple of times, and that is a little bit too hard for this for the center console. Maybe a little bit more kind of soft touch material wouldn't have gone amiss. However, if that's the only spot I'm able to pick fault in, they're doing pretty well. You may have noticed when I got in the car, the seat actually whirred me forwards into my driving position, and when I open the door, it actually whirs back to make it easier to get out of the car. I've also got electronic lumbar support. I've got a range of height adjustability as well, so I can really kind of reach the ceiling. I guess this is what it feels like when Rob drives a car. Yeah, I don't like that. I'm going to go back down. The speaker system in this car is a Harman Kardon one, and it really does sound excellent. And another excellent feature of this car is this touchscreen display down here, because what it does is, yes, the climate controls are integrated into a touchscreen. However, it's a completely separate touchscreen to the main infotainment system, so they are always accessible, and you've got the ability to swap between using this screen as climate controls and as shortcut buttons for the infotainment system. You've also always got your front and rear defrost settings, as well as your auto climate button and recirculation options here. But if you tap this button, it brings up the shortcut options for the infotainment system, so you can quickly switch between your map, nav, radio, media, any kind of setup options you want. And then if that's the case, this dial is your volume knob, and this one allows you to switch between tracks. Don't forget to buckle up, obviously. So, the Sportage, what is it like to drive? The answer to that question is very good. I can see why this car is so popular in the UK. I can see why it's I can see why it's Kia's best-selling model in both the UK market, the European market, as well as the global market. If it's selling that well, there must be something that's quite good about it. And when it comes to the driving experience, I can confirm that there are several positive things about it. Just on the whole, it's a very competent drive, I think is the best way of describing it. It doesn't do anything particularly outstandingly, but it does everything pretty well. And realistically, what more can you ask for from a family crossover? You know, that's what you need, isn't it? So, the Sportage has a 1.6 litre 4-cylinder turbocharged petrol engine, which produces by itself around 165 to 170 brake horsepower. The engine in this model is mated to an electric motor mounted on the transmission, which boosts that power figure up to around 225 brake horsepower, and that will take the Sportage from 0 to 60 in 7.7 seconds, which is pretty reasonable for a car of this size and weight. And I must say, it doesn't necessarily feel that fast, but I can believe it's that fast. And I think part of the reason it doesn't necessarily feel that fast is how well this car insulates you from the road. It's supremely quiet at high speeds. It really does handle itself incredibly well as a motorway cruiser, and the whole driving experience generally is very well refined, very well controlled, and very competent. Now, this car is a conventional hybrid, so it's self-charging, as they like to say. What that actually means is that the battery pack is quite small. It's about 1.3 something kilowatt hours, which is not very large at all. And what it also means is that realistically, you cannot drive this very far at all on electric power alone. The engine will kick in because it is a conventional hybrid in the sense that the engine is the primary mover and the electric motor is there just to add a little bit of smoothness and power to everyday driving. The car can creep forwards and set off under its own battery power. However, once you're moving and if you need a little bit more oomph, the engine comes in to give you that. You get the really satisfying electronic whir as well from the drivetrain because it sets off under that electric power. Now, I mentioned that in kind of creeping situations, it will just run under electric power by itself. So if you're in kind of stop-start city traffic, you can expect the car to kind of inch forwards in that traffic under electric power only, so the engine wouldn't come on in that kind of driving situation. And what that means is that in a city you can get pretty good fuel economy for a car of this size and shape. Now, I've been doing quite a bit of motorway driving and I've easily seen low to mid 40 miles per gallon, and I expect that in stop-start city driving you aren't going to see too much less than that, really. Now, when you're on more twisty roads, you will see that MPG drop a little bit. I've been kind of getting mid to high 30s from this engine in my routine driving with this car, which actually, for the kind of roads and type of driving I'm doing on the regular, that is quite a good figure for a car of this size and shape. More technology that this car has, you've obviously got your huge 12.3-inch digital driver's cluster and infotainment screen, as well as those climate controls that I mentioned before, which are excellent. They're really accessible and brightly lit up, Volkswagen. And you've also got the feature that I know Doug DeMuro has raved about several times in Kia and Hyundai models, and that is the blind spot cameras. So when you indicate to change lanes, or just, well, when you indicate, you are shown in the driver's gauge cluster a camera view down the side of the vehicle for the indicator you've turned on. And what that really helps to do is completely eliminate your blind spots, because you can obviously see quite a lot in the mirror, and then coupled with that camera view, you can see everything down the side of the car, which just makes it so much easier to do lane changes. And if you couple that with the fact that this also has blind spot monitoring, so you get a little warning triangle in each wing mirror if there's a car in that blind spot, you really do feel in safe hands. Power-wise, the 200 odd horsepower that this has does feel sufficient. You don't feel, I've not found myself wanting for more power while I've been driving this car, and realistically all of the elements of the driving experience are pretty good. There's enough feedback and weight behind the steering that you don't feel disconnected. The road holding is pretty good. The handling itself is reasonable for a car of this size. You know, it's not going to handle like a hot hatch, but for a jacked up hatchback, it's pretty good. The suspension's firm enough that it doesn't roll too much in corners. However, that firm suspension does mean that on jittery road surfaces, you do find yourself getting bounced around a little bit. I think for comfort, it could do with being a tad softer, but I appreciate that would make it handle substantially worse. So it's a fine balance, and I think they're probably just about right with it. So, the Kia Sportage. Having had this car for a week, I can confidently say that I can see why it's one of the best-selling cars in the UK. And that's because it's just a really good all-rounder. From driving experience to space and really economy, it does tick most of those boxes, and it ticks them pretty well. So if you are in the market for a mid-sized crossover, I'd definitely recommend taking a look at the Sportage. For me personally, I think I would go for a plug-in hybrid as opposed to a conventional hybrid, but there are options to suit most people's desires. That's everything from me in this video, so I'd just like to say thank you for watching. Thank you to Kia UK for letting me have this press car for a week. And while you're here, please remember to like the video, subscribe to the Buckle Up YouTube channel if you haven't already, check out all of our social medias which are linked in the description, and if you'd like to support us a little bit more directly, we also have a merch store and a Patreon, or you can become a channel member. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.